It's the agenda that the media pushes. It's frightening because, especially my son, he's 8 years old, he's very impressionable. Because I don't have cable TV, I tend to curb this in my own household, but where he's elsewhere, I don't have control over that. And if he sees certain things, and not even necessarily what we've discussed, but just other things that he's not ready to respond to maturely, I mean, because he really just doesn't understand. It forces the issue for us to have the conversation with him. And let's just be honest, I'm not ready for that. He's raised in two different communities, being that, my ex and I are divorced, and so to understand that what goes at his mom's house doesn't necessarily go at his dad's, and trying to have a unified plan with my ex, that's difficult, because I can't tell you how many times, well, Mom will let me, or just the other day, well, Mom, Dad, let's not go there. Because I really want to have more conversations as adults about what are the things that we will allow and what won't we allow, so that there isn't that gray matter. Because that's a difficult, if I'm my son, that's challenging. I don't know what I can do and what I can't do if it's not made clear. He's in Scouts, and his mom and I have made very clear that we promote opportunities equally, and we don't agree with the current stance of the Scouting program. I have a storied history, not myself, but my father's 20 plus years in the Scouts. So in my family, it's an element of pride. And I've had this conversation with my own father, and he, as you may have recalled from the first time we met, tends to be a little more closed-minded on the issue.
Still?
He does, absolutely. But he respects the fact that it's something that bothers, my ex and I. And that's a difficult conversation to have, in that it's not hard to help him understand. And in fact, we take it as a very loving opportunity to say, listen, this is how things should be. It's not how they are right now, but this is what we're aspiring to as a group.
But let me ask you this. This is an interesting question. Are all people who are closed-minded bad people?
No,
right.
Of course not. I'll give you the best example of that. My grandfather, who's since passed, but when he was alive, we had a fantastic relationship. He mentored me in ways that I wasn't aware he was doing at the time. He was a man of few words, but very powerful. Retired GM truck division, blue collar, Army veteran. He actually rode in General Patton's Army, but very humble. Only thing he would talk about with the Army is how he got within a half inch of being taken out by a German sniper, and he had the helmet to show me where it pierced the Kevlar. And I remember that story. But surely I digress. The man was incredible, and he was the most passionately racist bigot. In light of the fact that, as you've stated, his closed-mindedness came from his upbringing, his family. He grew up in a small town in Missouri, Kennett, Missouri, I think it was. And I look at that and I think, prairie, hillbilly, country, I'm obviously stereotyping, but I can't tell you how many times I would catch myself, because I'd be around him and I would start to model his behavior. And I used to do it without, refraining, because as a child I didn't know any different. I mean, the term colored was pretty commonplace, and I didn't know it was wrong until, I don't know who gave me the example, but somebody shared it with me that, no, you really shouldn't say that. Why? But I don't think very often, not that I'm excusing, one time is too many, but the N-word, which I don't like to repeat, it's a nasty word. There's a lot of implication behind it that's unnecessary. It's a word that really should be stricken in many ways from our language, but black was very rarely used and substituted for colored, and he would take the opportunities to belittle minorities in the media. When stories were run about him, it was quick stereotyping, premature conclusion of, oh, well, of course the guy's a crook, he's colored.
But a lot of people say, well, I grew up around my father my family, I mean, everyone was racist. Everybody. You know what I mean? And some people say, well, that's how they were raised, but I was raised that way too, and I'm not. So why are you not?
Complete choice. Drove a stake in the ground and decided that I was going to break that generational barrier.
Why is it important that we do that, though?
Aside from the fact that it's the right thing to do, because as a good human being, we need to learn to love one another.
Agreed.
It has to be a personal decision. It has to be something that you wake up and you consciously commit that not only will you not participate, that you also will not be a party of another who does. That being the greatest challenge, in my opinion. I used to allow racial slurs and just nonsense, we'll call it, to continue because I would say, well, I'll separate myself from it. I'm halfway across the room. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear anything. Today, I actually confront it, or I carefront it, as you will. And I'm quick to do it, too. I just did the other day about a conversation I heard regarding homosexuality. Was not an easy thing to do. It was in public forum. I guarantee there's probably people talking about it tonight, but I really don't care.
What makes people uncomfortable about gay people, do you think?
It goes back again to how they're raised. I believe, again, because I was raised in a fairly diverse community in Flint, Michigan, around, especially in my school, there were people Asian descent, Indian, African American, you name it. And in the military, that's pretty common. But if you get around somebody who was raised in predominantly white culture, and then they get around minorities, they're a threat. And they're a threat to, I'm not saying they are in and of themselves by virtue of being around. I'm saying that they're perceived as a threat. The reason being that we protect our turf. And that's sad. Because we're so far beyond, I want to believe we are. I don't think we are, but I want to believe we can be, or that we're heading in the right direction from these silo wars. You know, we protect our ground to our death in a lot of ways, which is just foolish. For what? Why is space, why is place something that you're willing to defend to your death? Is it really that important?
Well, I think we have so few things that are important sometimes that we latch on to whatever, whatever's going on. Well, everyone's thinking this, so that seems safe, I'll do that. And I understand why people are afraid of different races. It has to rinse from the culture. I mean, from our family back, forward to your son and his, and if I have kids, and that way, I mean, it has to rinse. Change is evolutionary.
Sure.
What has been the...
Revolution's uncomfortable.
Yeah. What change have you made that you're most proud of?
I'm no longer even remotely as controlling as I once was. I would be controlling emotionally in ways where I wouldn't even be aware of it. And in some ways, again, harkens back to what was modeled. My father suffered from that and I don't know where he is in terms of reconciling with his own controlling tendencies. It's not so much a conversation that he and I have had regularly. We may have touched on it a time or two, perhaps too long, if you will. And so I backed away, but I really wanted to understand the origin of that because it was very difficult for me to accept. At the same time, humbling myself and finding ways to admit not only the pain that I've caused myself, but more importantly, others. It's difficult because, in all honesty, you're walking down your own wake and you see the trail of pain that you, in some way, had a hand in. And certainly the most notable of that would be my marriage, and I accept that. And it's awful, it's unfortunate, but I looked at that as that's where I was at that time. There was a time where in my relationship, early on, we enjoyed a number of different extracurricular activities, the greater part of which was softball league and other physical type things, and that interest waned, and I didn't understand that, but I accepted it and I worked with it, and until such time as I controlled the shit out of it and became more of a drill sergeant than anything else, a coach that was unwelcome. I can fall back on that I knew what my intentions were and that I didn't maliciously, at least to the best of my knowledge, create situations where I was holding somebody down and preventing them from growth. But more often than not, when I look back, I realize there's more ways I was responsible than more ways I wasn't. And that truth was something I came to much later, and it's made a tremendous difference in my life, because I can be considerably more gentle and assuring and supportive. And I'm grateful for that. Deeply.
What's the best thing about you?
Honesty and loyalty. It's how I try to walk out life. I mean, there are certainly people who are more honest or find ways to be more bold.
It's all relative.
Well, it is.
It is.
That's a very attractive quality in our friendship.
Yeah.
You know,
most people like
some of that has, well, sure, but that has something to do with, you know, the Brooklyn sensibility, but it's not all that. It's heart too. You know, it's what makes you you.
Right.
And that's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
With that said, it's what I aspire to be is loyal and compassionate.